Welcome back to News Talk. Great to have you there, everybody. I'm Bruce DePoy. Coming your way later this half hour, Washington Post reporter Mike DeBonis talks about the GOP Senate refusal to even meet with President Obama's future Supreme Court nominee. Right now, though, back to our conversation with and your phone calls for David Albert. He's with Greater Washington. We're talking streetcar and the challenge the city's streetcar program has had getting up and running. The good news being that streetcar along 8th Street and Benning Road will begin taking passengers on Saturday. We hope that goes well. We'll be covering for it, of course, either way. We'll be covering it, of course, for you either way. We're talking about transit options generally. We're going to go to the phones in a moment. We'll talk with Connie in the minutes ahead. So, Connie, stay on the line, please. And if you would like to join the conversation, grab an open line at 703-387-1020. Talking transit. We'll go to the phones, as I say, in the moments that follow. Years behind schedule, millions over budget. Is what happened with the 8th Street line a cautionary tale for the city as it thinks about adding additional streetcar lines elsewhere, and for places like Arlington or wherever that might consider this a viable option for a particular area going forward?
I don't think that this particular experience with a streetcar necessarily presages the way it would have to be with other lines. As we talked about before, a lot of it was D.C. kind of trying to move ahead with something before it had gotten really all of the dominoes lined up for it to work. And I think going forward for more extensions, DDOT does have to do a better job of planning them out. Sometimes you can overplan. Sometimes you can have paralysis by analysis, and you just spend years and you plan, and then a new administration comes in and they throw out the plan and do another plan. So I think people were trying to avoid that. But in this case, I think there was a little bit of an under-planning problem. And they need to look at how it's going to go east and west, how it's going to go to Benning Road, how it's going to go to Georgetown and downtown D.C., and make sure also that a line is going to be fast. It's going to be a good transit option that will help people.
Almost merits aside, the politics of it will be significant because some politician, some leader, mayor, mayoral candidates, council members, etc., are going to have to put their support behind a future streetcar line for it to go forward, and they're going to have to explain, given the debacle we've just been through, why next time will be completely different. It'll go so much better.
And it's just worth pointing out that sometimes there are highway projects that end up being a mess. Virginia had some horrible debacles under Governor McDonnell, for example, of spending enormous amounts of money on contractors for a road that wasn't even necessary and never got built, for instance. And people don't say, well, we should never build another road. They do say, let's not do that again. Let's not make that mistake. And we should do the same here, but it doesn't mean all transit projects are not worthwhile.
To the phones. Connie, you're first. Thanks for joining us. Jump into the conversation, please. Hello, Connie.
Good morning. Thank you for answering my call.
Sure.
I'm a native Arlingtonian, and I don't live there now, but I was native from Arlington from my childhood. And I would say I don't think that having the streetcar is a good thing. For the expense, I'm glad Arlington did refuse for the expense. And if you have a streetcar, then they should be in the middle of the street. I think it's on the side of the streets in Washington, D.C. If it were in the middle of the street, at least traffic could travel on either side.
Thank you very much. And we have lines open for others who wish to join in at 703-387-1020. Connie raises two big issues, one very nitty-gritty, one very nuts and bolts, where within the real estate that is available does the track go? Where do the trains go? And the other, the cost. Gas fluctuates. It happens to be low now, but it's got to be worth what you get for any of us to feel good about it.
Absolutely. So on the issue of that, and there's a lot of specifics about how you exactly plan the line to work the best. Often in putting it in the middle of the street, she's right, can be better. And it is important for D.C. and other jurisdictions as they plan these to make sure to do them well, to not just kind of go with the easiest and cheapest way to do it, where maybe then it's not very fast, maybe it's not as good for riders. If you're going to do a line like this and spend the money for a streetcar line, make it good. And I think going forward, DDOT is going to plan how to make sure to make it good. And residents need to hold them to that. Look at it. Is this going to be a good line? If it's not, maybe it's not worth doing that sort of thing. Overall, as far as cost, a lot of times with a lot of these government programs with capital investment, we look at the costs. It's important also to just look at what are the likely benefits. What's the economic gain? To spend a bunch of money and get economic benefit, get more tax revenue, get more mobility that saves you traffic, that cuts down on the traffic for others, that draws more residents to want to live in the region, can be very valuable. So it's just sometimes the streetcar might be a good cost-benefit trade-off. Sometimes it might be a bad one. And I think some proposed lines are good, some not so much. But you need to look at both sides.
Bus rapid transit is similar but different. Rubber tires on pavement, the advantage being for people who use it that there's a dedicated right-of-way. The bus goes around traffic. Is bus rapid transit, which we're seeing pop up in different cities, different communities around the country, rivaling fixed rail systems for attractiveness and cost per passenger per mile?
There are reasons that sometimes streetcar or sometimes rail is better. Streetcar, it's just important so people understand, sometimes people talk about light rail, which is sort of like bus rapid transit, where primarily it has its own separate lanes, like the Purple Line is being proposed to be. A streetcar sometimes has a mix. It's maybe sometimes in mixed traffic and sometimes in its own lane. And Montgomery County's bus rapid transit proposal might sometimes have its own lane and sometimes be in mixed traffic. You're absolutely right. Having those dedicated lanes, being able to go around traffic is important for a transit project to work well. And with Montgomery County, it's very important that, just like we were saying with the streetcar, to do it right and do it well, that Montgomery County give it those dedicated lanes in the roads where it's going to build them, at least in the vast majority of the time. There can be a little bit here and there that's not. But if it's just going to be a bus in the same lanes that you paint a different color and say is bus rapid transit, that's really not bus rapid transit. And that's actually one of the problems with what happened in Arlington, where opponents of the streetcar said, hey, look, there can be bus rapid transit on Columbia Pike. And they showed pictures of Eugene, Oregon's bus rapid transit, which has its own lanes and these giant medians and all these trees and everything, and said, we can do that in Columbia Pike. Well, you could improve the buses on Columbia Pike, and Arlington will, but there was no way to do what they had done in Eugene, Oregon.
To do it right, to do it well, to borrow your phrase, there needs to be connectivity.
Right.
Is the 8th Street line going to disappoint because it runs from a point to another point and then stops, and then I guess what? People are going to get off and climb a hill and then walk through a parking garage and then get on the red line, or walk to for those who can't get off and walk to an office or other destination. Right. Is connectivity a problem?
I think a lot of people will probably be who have not tried walking from Union Station Metro to the Union Station parking garage will be a little disappointed. It's not the worst walk. It's not a terrible walk. You go out of the Metro, you go up an escalator into the main station, then up again into the parking garage and sort of out to the back of the parking garage. But that's definitely not the ideal way for the streetcar to connect to Metro.
It's not like it's not like walking down an escalator from the red to the blue, for example.
That's right.
What we're used to.
There are two things. One is that's why it's important for it to go west at least as far as Gallery Place Metro Center, where it can connect much more directly, or actually, sorry, it would be probably Mount Vernon Square, Metro, and Farragut, to be able to connect to lines more directly. That's one thing. Also, DC has plans for adding ultimately a better connection from the Metro to the streetcar. That's just something that will cost some money that maybe will have to get done.
Are you going to be there on Saturday?
I will. I'm hoping to.
David Alpert of Greater Washington, thank you as always for stopping by. We always appreciate your expertise. We'll talk with you again.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks for your time. We'll step aside. We'll talk about the Supreme Court vacancy when we return.